I have lots of people say to me, well, Michelle, that works for you. You're a speaker. You can talk really easily. The fact of the matter is, if you would like to have better conversations, that can be learned. And you don't have to be a professional public speaker to improve your relationships at home or at the office. So today's episode, I'm sharing with you the 4-part process to have better professional and personal conversations. And you will not want to miss any one of those steps. So stay till the very end. Today, I'm also sharing with you 3 of my favorite digital things. And I'm also answering a question about how to keep track of your social media ideas. Welcome to Make It Happen. For today's Pick My Brain, we are going to Annette Linker, who is a pottery pet pro. And if you have a question you'd like to send in, you can send it to Michelle@speakmichelle.com. Put Pick My Brain in the subject line, and I'd be happy to answer it for you. You can also find me on social media and send me a direct message if that's easier for you. But her question is, how do I come up with social media ideas, and then how do I keep track of them? This is a great question, and I get it frequently. And I create a social media posts bank. And just so when I have ideas, I do it in one of 2 ways. The first one is, as I'm often getting ideas driving down the road or doing something else, I actually have a reminder in my phone where I can say, hey, add blank to the social media list. And then when I'm going to do my planning or I'm transferring it to a spreadsheet, I can pull up that list and I can check them off as I go to make sure that I'm not dual posting. So that can be one way. You can keep track of ideas in a notebook if you're a pen and paper type of person. My favorite is in a spreadsheet. So in addition to being able to leave questions or ideas on the go, I also have a spreadsheet where I keep track of quote ideas, questions I want to use, caption ideas, graphic ideas. And sometimes that post bank gets a little bit low and we've got to work on it again. Right now it's a little low and my assistant needs more things to be able to post. And sometimes I have months and months of ideas in advance. But when I'm creating them and being strategic in my plan, I'm keeping them all in one place. And here is the greatest part about it. After a few years, I keep tabs for different months. After a few years, I can go back and look at old posts, make some tweaks and changes, make sure that they're time sensitive and friendly, and I can update them, and I can kind of recycle old content. I don't just post the same thing over and over again, but we might take a quote and put it with a different template, or we might take a question and make it in a different way. Or now we're taking a lot of content that we've used before, but we're turning it into short form content on Reels for Instagram and Facebook Meta, so that we've got fresh, different types of content that outlet is currently using. And yeah, I had a graphic before, but now I've got a little mini video. And so use your post bank, and however you create it, know that you can go back to it and use it time and time again. But the key is to create it. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, well, Michelle, I don't get ideas on the go, what do I do? I encourage people to set aside 2 hours a month, and you can do it 30 minutes a week, or you can do it in one time block where you create social media ideas for the next 30 days. So what is your next month that you're sitting down to plan? Sit down and think through, okay, well, if I were going to create 30 posts, what would that look like? And then you can decide after you've got the content in place, this will be a graphic, this will be a reel, this will just be text, this will be a carousel, this will be a TikTok, whatever it is, you can create different types of content as long as you know what the content anchor is first. And then you can go through and create lots of different types depending on the outlets that you use. I hope that's helpful as you create your own social media bank, and I wish you all the best in being proactive in your social media strategy. I am thrilled because we have a sponsor here with us for Make It Happen. They're going to be sponsoring our content all month long, and we met by accident, and now I'm so grateful. This is Sherrick Peck, and he is a physical therapist by trade, but also an inventor, which we'll talk more about today. And he is someone who has personally healed from major traumatic injuries and found a solution. So I would love for you to share, as we get started, tell us a little bit about this product that bound us together and why it is a passion for you.
Absolutely. I'm a physical therapist by profession. I also have a master's degree in counseling. But if you go back in my history, I suffered a stroke as a teenager. Oh, wow. And broke my neck, and I had to learn to walk again and learn to function. And it's been my lifelong passion to help people get back to functioning so that they can help a lot of other people. Well, fast forward a lot of years, we invented a tool that we created right here in Utah. It's called the Tuner Pro device. And in fact, 2 years ago, we were the coolest thing made in Utah. But our device is a vagus nerve stimulator. It helps the body heal from almost anything.
Okay, so this is where we met. My daughter, at the beginning of the school year, she is going into 6th grade, was having massive debilitating headaches. And she missed like 5 or 6 days of school because she just and I could tell it was legitimate. I could also tell that she was probably dealing with some emotional things. And I could also tell that it was really knocking her down, and her body was responding to maybe some anxiety of transition and other things. And so we tried to work at it from a number of different places. We tried all kinds of things and nothing was working. And my friend says, you really need to try the tuner. And so she drove it 20 minutes to me, and I was so grateful. And of all the things we tried, my daughter said, this is the one that helped me the most. And so that's when I reached out to you and was like, holy cow, I need to know more about this. Please tell me. And so thank you so much for being part of that story. And we have it now. And from time to time, she's like, oh, Mom, I need that thing that helps my headaches. Mm-hmm. And so we're so grateful that we have this tool in our home. So I would love for you to share, if you could share, what are 3 things or 3 reasons why somebody would want to have this tool in their home?
Well, our tool is used by chiropractors and doctors all over the world for chronic pain reasons, but they also use it for brain rehabilitation. And of course, it's a wonder with migraine headaches, jaw pain, all kinds of things like that. But probably the easiest thing is you can do it in your own home, as you've noticed with your daughter. It provides a wonderful tool that a parent can use or a child can use that helps their brain get doing better.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing and for coming and for being part of the show. I would love for people where would you like them to go first? If they're interested in finding something that will help them with whatever their ailments or challenges are, where should they go first?
Well, if they want to see it in action, go to our YouTube channel.
Okay.
But if they want to learn quite a bit, go to our Resimax.com website. And we've got a lot of information there. We've got over 120 videos to help them see how they might use it for just about any condition.
I love that. And we should have started with this, but we're actually going to give one away. So if you would like to get one, we are going to put in the show notes the link for the YouTube channel so you can go look at those videos. They were very helpful for me as well. We'll also put the link to Resimax so that you can go and check them out for yourself. But if you'd like an opportunity to win one, we are giving it away through Instagram. So if you go to Instagram at Speak Michelle, there is a post that says Resimax giveaway. If you go find it, there are 3 things that you can do to enter to win. And at the end of the month, we will draw a winner and we'll ship it straight to your home so that you can enjoy the benefits of this awesome tool. Thank you for being part of Make It Happen. So today, since we're talking about conversation and connection, we're going to talk a little bit about ways that you can communicate better so that you can get the results that you want in your business, in your relationships, in your goals. And believe it or not, communication is really a huge part about what you're trying to do and accomplish. So before we start, I'm in story mode, as you know. I've got to tell you a story first. When my kids were really little, my son was 5, my daughter was 3, and I took them to Disneyland. And they wanted to ride the Dumbo ride. Now, back then, they didn't have the same kind of line management that they have now. Back then, it was blazing hot sun. They didn't have cool things going on. Now they've got shade and it's so much better. But when you ride the Dumbo ride and it takes 45 minutes, it's a really hard line because there is so much waiting. When the ride is going, the line does not move. And so we're waiting in line and my son kept saying, Mom, when do we get to go on this ride? And I explained 45 minutes and I explained the lines, and 5 minutes would go by and he would say, Mom, when is it our turn? And so I picked him up and I showed him how the line worked. And the switchback goes like this and this and this and this and this. And it looks like we're close, but then there's actually a line behind the ride that you can't even see. And it goes like that and that and that and that and that. And then it comes up to the front. And as we got closer and started to pass where they were loading the ride, I saw a woman who was working the ride and she was handing out wooden feathers for people who are getting on the ride. So I got to point out to him, I said, look, as soon as you get a magic feather, that's when you know you get to be on the next ride. And that worked for a little bit. He still asked me creatively and using different words, how much do you think we have left? Instead of saying, when is it our turn? But we waited for the rest of the line. And as we got closer, of course, she handed the last wooden feather to the group right in front of us. And as his anticipation was getting worked to be able to ride the ride as he thought he was so close, he was very sad. when she didn't have any more, but she actually came up to us and said, hey, how many elephants do you need? And we said 1. And she said, well, I am out of wood and feathers, but if you will hold this imaginary feather, I will get you on the very next ride. My son snatched that feather, was holding on to it so tightly. Now, I had kind of forgotten about the whole interaction, but a few minutes in, my son is tugging on me again. He's like, Mom. And I was like, we are on next. And he was like, oh no, I know, but my hand is tired. Will you hold the feather? And I think of this story so frequently, and I love it so much that the Disney magic for him was in it. He felt a responsibility to hold the imaginary feather, even though as adults, we knew that that was not what was going to get him on the ride. And I think sometimes we approach our communication very similarly. We expect people to snatch on to imaginary things just by the things that we say. And we assume that that means that we're in agreements or that we're working together as a team, when really we haven't communicated with the same kind of magic that is around you when you're sitting in a Disney park. So today we're going to talk about how to communicate in better ways and what you can say to help people support you better, but then also how you can show up as a better employee in team meetings, how you can show up as a better boss with your assistants, how you can show up as a better spouse or partner or parent in the ways that you communicate with others using what I call conversational enrollment. Now, I know that some of you are driving, some of you are sitting at the gym, but I want to play a little game and I want you just to think about the answers to these questions and we'll have a little conversation about them too. So these are multiple choice questions, so you can just play along, listen, and just see which one you think is right. So how many messages, like phone, voice, text, email, memos, faxes, papers, meetings, do employees manage in an average day? So this was a study that I found for employees working in a corporation, not entrepreneurs, though I imagine it's a little bit similar. But do you think it's A, 157 messages a day, B, 777 messages a day, C, 1,800 messages a day, or D, 2,103 messages in a day? Now, when I'm doing this quiz and we're doing it in front of live audiences, it's fun to have people raise their hands and say who's A, who's B, who's C, who's D. Again, it won't matter if we're doing that virtually, but I am curious if you picked the right answer, which is C, 1,800 messages. 1,800 messages. I share this with you on a podcast and show about communication as a reminder that every single person you interact with is being bombarded with communication on a daily basis. There are so many different ways that people can communicate with us now, with all the different direct messages on social media apps and everything in between. And so people are overloaded and, quite frankly, overwhelmed with communication. So it's no wonder that sometimes our team meetings don't go as well as we want, or a conversation with someone we care about goes a different direction. We are bombarded with information. And so how can you cut through the clutter and the noise of communication to get the results that you want? So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, what is the number 1 reason that couples split, either divorce or break up? Is it A, spouse doesn't validate feelings or opinions enough? Is it B, too much nagging and complaining? Is it C, money? Or is it D, communication issues and the inability to resolve conflict? Now, you've probably heard the number 1 reason for divorce is money, or maybe you've even heard like intimacy or financial challenges or business or something else in between. But the real answer is actually D, communication issues and the inability to resolve conflict. Studies have shown that even if you have completely polar opposite views on money or hot topic issues in your relationship, it doesn't matter that you feel differently. It matters how you can communicate about them. And I love this distinction because even if you can find 2 people that are polar opposites trying to be in a committed relationship, if they can figure out how to communicate in healthy ways, they are more likely to be able to overcome some of the common pitfalls. So you can, even if you disagree on how to approach money, you can communicate about it to find a way that will get you to a win-win, especially if it's healthy communication. So if you think about the other issues, I bring this up here because most people that you interact with are in some kind of committed relationship or want to be. And that also spills into other aspects of their lives. So if their relationships are going well, then things at work will tend to go a little bit better. If relationships at home feel hot and hard, then that will spill into the work environment. So that's just another factor that affects communication in the workplace. Number 3, what is the probability that you will complete a goal if you're accountable to someone? So is it A, 65%, B, 10%, C, 95%, or D, 40%? So there's a lot of studies that are out there very similar that says the likelihood of you completing a goal or a New Year's resolution is somewhere between 8 and 10%. But what moves the needle? Interestingly enough, it goes up to 40% if you simply make the decision that you're going to do it. So like if you think about it and like, oh, that would be a good idea, but then you decide, you actually go up to 40%. You go up to 65% if you commit to someone else that you'll do it. So this is where common accountability comes in. If you tell someone else you've got a goal, or if you're working on a project at work, or if you're going to run a marathon, if you're going to save $5,000, you are more likely to do it because you have accountability to someone. Now it goes up even higher to 95% if you set a specific time that you're going to be accountable to someone. So if you say, hey, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z towards my goal in the next week, I will email you next week or I'll text you next week and let you know how it goes. You are more likely to accomplish the things that you want. Now, I bring this up here because it's very rare to find a goal that actually doesn't involve someone else. There are things that you need other people to help you with. And so as you communicate what you need and you build in some healthy accountability, you're more likely to accomplish the things that you need to accomplish. Also, if you are a boss or a manager or a leader in any way, shape, or form, if you understand the fundamentals about accountability and goal success, you're better able to cheer people on in the things that they need to do in their businesses so that you can be a better team leader, whatever that looks like. And that will also change the way that you communicate in more positive ways. And now the final question before we dive into our content today is, what percentage of people in the United States are trained in conversational enrollment? Is it A, 38%, B, 3%, C, 12%, or D, 45%? Now, the answer to this question is really, I have absolutely no idea. So it doesn't matter what number you said or what letter, because this conversational enrollment, what I'm about to teach you, is gaining speed and traction among clients and the people that I work with, but really is not taught in the same way other places. And so I'm excited to share it with you today. I hope that it's helpful. And I hope that as we go through this 4-step process to better communication, that your brain will start to think about different ways you can use this in the relationships that you have both personally and professionally. Because you probably had a situation or an encounter, a meeting that didn't go as well as you thought, or a conversation where you thought, I wish I had handled that differently, or talked about that in a different way. And so as we go through this process, I hope that you will start to think about the ways you can be proactive in your communication. A lot of what we talk about marketing is about being proactive. Things that we talk about in goal setting and high performance is being proactive. And communication is no different. Yet most of us go throughout the day being incredibly reactive in the conversations that we're having with very little planning. And so if you plan some things out in advance, you might find that your conversations run a little bit more smoothly. So let's look at what that looks like. Now, I call this conversation enrollment. Another thing that I call it in the Make It Happen blueprint, there's a whole chapter in my book called Persuasion, where we cover a similar principle. But really, it's the art of asking for what you want. Because enrollment is simply a conversation where you share your vision with someone else, and then you discuss the desired outcome or the goal. And then after that discussion, you agree together on the way that you're going to move forward. And so conversational enrollment is really the way that you get people on board with the things that you want and need. Do you have a team member that you want to help you with a project? Well, using an enrollment process like this might make them more effective than just saying, hey, here's the project. It needs to be done by Friday. If you have a situation or something coming up that you need to work out with a friend or with a partner or spouse, and you can be prepared to have that conversation in a way that they might hear and listen to what you have to say, that is conversational enrollment. So for me, conversational enrollment falls into a 4-part process. And I'm going to share an overview first so that you kind of have a roadmap of what we're looking at. And then I'll go into each step individually. But the first step is to share the dream. But this is really a summary. Sometimes when people go into conversations like this, they share so many details and it's exhausting and people can't wrap their brain around them. In this first step, think of 1 or 2 sentences that will clearly and concisely help people understand what you're trying to accomplish. Do you want to run a half marathon and you need support and help with someone watching your kids or cheering you on at the finish line? Do you have a project at work that you know is going to push you forward and you need the support of your boss and your team members in order to be able to make time for it? Whatever it is, think through 1 or 2 sentences, not the whole thing, 1 or 2 sentences that gets them interested in what you're talking about. The second step is a statement of commitment. It's you saying, I have thought this out, which supports that you are being intentional about the conversation. It supports that you're intentional on the goal or project that you want to have accomplished. And it also is letting the other people know that this is something that you are committed to doing. Because if you're anything like me, you've probably shared goals and ideas and projects that you've wanted to accomplish before, and maybe some of them haven't happened. And so maybe the people that you're talking to, and maybe you're already bringing some past history to the table that makes you think, well, can I do this? Am I going to do this? Will I commit to doing this? Because I kind of failed at that last thing, and I kind of gave up on the thing before that, and maybe they won't hear me this time. But if you share a statement of commitment, they are likely to be committed as well, because they know and they will listen in a little bit better. Now, step 3 is the path. This is where you go into some detailed actions. Now, you don't have to share every single detail, but you do want to share the things that are pertinent to them. If you're having a conversation with an assistant or team member about a project, this is where you would share the details. I'm going to work on XYZ. I would like you to work on XYZ. Here is the timeline. Here is what I'm committed to doing. Here's what I need from you. And here's how we're going to go back and forth. And so that's where the detailed action plan or the path comes into place in step number 3. And then step number 4 is the shortest, but it tends to be the most important and often the most overlooked, but is a question of support. And it's simply asking someone if they can support you in moving forward in this way. Now, it's not a manipulation tactic, and it's not trying to race through the conversation, make it only one-sided. Often when I'm using this framework, I have conversation between the path and the question of support. I say, hey, how does that sound? Or what does that look like to you? Or can you see other things that I could do that would make this project or goal work better? Or what are some things that we can do together? Or do you have any questions that would help you understand or buy in? So it's really a conversation. It's not just a speech. It's a conversation. Remember, conversational enrollment is a two-way conversation. And so often there could be conversations throughout all of this, but then at the end, the question of support is, can I have your support in that? Or do you support me? Or are you willing to help? These are great questions that get the other person to say, okay, I totally understand what's going on. I see what needs to be done. And yes, I am supportive and committing to this. And I'm going to share with you a couple of examples that have been really helpful to me in how I have put this together. So first and foremost, and sometimes in business, it's really easy to just say, hey, here's the project that needs to be done. But when you take the time to sit down and go through this 4-step process, hey, this is what I want to accomplish. I'm committed to getting this done. This is what the path that needs to be taken. This is what I need from you. And this is what would come back. Can you support me in this? That goes a lot farther in getting team members to support you than just saying, hey, this is the task to be done. So I've used it a lot in business, but I've also used it a lot in personal relationships. I've had conversations with my spouse before about how to handle an upcoming trip that was really easy to go through the process and say, hey, I know I'm going to be gone. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get all these things done. I'm committed to making this happen. Here's my path to make sure that it will work for you and to make it easy on you. Under what circumstances can you support me in this? And then we begin a conversation about other things I can do that will make that process easy. I've had this conversation with my children. When they are feeling frustrated with my business or frustrated with me being gone out of town, I can say, hey, I work for XYZ and I'm committed to doing that to help our family. And so what that means is that sometimes I go out of town and sometimes that means you get to support me from here. And then when I come back, we're going to plan to do this activity. Can you support me on this trip? And then they're a lot more enrolled in the conversation rather than me saying, hey, see you later. I'm going to be in San Diego for a few days, be back tomorrow, or be back Thursday, or whatever that is. Then they're like, well, what's going on? Or why is that happening? Or what does it have to do with me? It just is involving them in the process. Now, remember when we started about remembering that people are bombarded with messages all the time. And so one of the things that will make conversational enrollment work well for you is having these conversations at the right time with people. If you know that they're too busy, then you might need to wait. It's not a good idea to railroad a meeting about something else to get your plan in place. Maybe you need to set up another time for that. If you need to have a private conversation with a friend that's going to support you running a marathon, then you might say, hey, I have a question for you and I would love to sit down and chat sometime. When is good for you? And so you might want to make space in time for those conversations so that the noise and the distractions that are popping up on people's phones don't hold you back from having the conversations that you know need to be had. But however you use conversational enrollment, and we'll share a quick 4-step checklist for you in the show notes so that you have that for future conversations. But again, this is also about being prepared and being proactive in your conversations. If you need to have a big conversation, sit down and even write down each of these pieces and each of these 4 steps and practice what that looks like. Again, this is not about manipulation. This is about true conversation and understanding and gaining the support and the help that you need from the people that are around you. And again, whether it's a goal that you personally want to accomplish or something professional that needs to happen in your business, using this process in the right time and the right space with the right preparation will cut through the clutter and the noise of the world and allow you to have better conversations that are intentional and more meaningful. So as you think about the different conversations, what are some of the places that are popping up for you right now? What are some conversations that you know need to be had? I had to have a tricky conversation with a vendor a couple of weeks ago, and I was in a good space about it, but I also knew I needed to get it cleaned up. And I was sharing about it, and in my mind, I was trying to think through what it was, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can totally use conversational enrollment for this. And I had totally forgotten my own process, but it was really easy to have a conversation that just says, hey, I am moving forward on this in my business, and I'm committed to the success of this plan. I am going to do X, Y, and Z to make it work. Are you part of this process? Because if it's not, no big deal. I'm happy to find somebody else who can help me, and I'm cheering you on in your goals and dreams. And it was really, it wasn't like, hey, you haven't finished this deadline, and I've asked you to do this a bunch of times, and it hasn't happened. That wasn't the energy that I showed up in. I went back to the model. I focused on the goals first and sharing my commitment for moving forward either way. And I gave them space to decide if they were in or out. It wasn't, hey, you promised you were going to get this done and you have to get this done because you promised. It was really being healthy enough to say, hey, do I have your support? Because there will be times where people are like, I'm out on that, or that's not the right fit. And it doesn't mean that you failed. It means that you succeeded. Because if they're not 100% on board, hooray that they told you. How many times have you started on a project with someone only to find that they're not pulling their weight or doing their part because you haven't had the conversation in the right way? Up front, if they're willing to say no, that frees your energy to be able to find the person who will say yes. So use conversational enrollment and don't feel like just because someone is like, oh, I don't think that's my jam, or no, that's not for me. Use questions to help people commit to working with you, and you'll find that you are emotionally able to work through not just your plans, but your conversations as well. And it puts, like I said, it puts you in a really healthy headspace to have kind of even tough conversations when you can go back to the goals. You can go back to the dream. You can go back to the commitment. You can go back to the path. And then when you go back to the question of support, that is the money question that will make it a lot easier. And then later when when they miss another deadline or don't get something done, you can say, hey, listen, I told you I'm committed to this path, and it's not about you, but I'm going to move forward in a way that's powerful because you have already set the boundaries and the guidelines for what needs to be done. And they know that you're committed and that you're going to move forward, whether that's with them or without them. And again, I say that without judgment and without heaviness, but if you can figure out how to have better, stronger conversations, then your ability to ask for the things that you need will increase. And you'll be able to do it from a very emotionally safe way that helps you to improve the relationships that you have, even in sticky situations. Now, some of you are like, oh, Michelle, you do not know so-and-so. I could not have that kind of conversation. And I have had clients time and time again come back and say, I have had 100 conversations with that person. It has never gone well until I tried it this way. So just give it a try. Just like anything else, it'll take some practice. It'll take some tweaking for you to figure out what works and what doesn't work for you. Give yourself the permission and the space to ease into it so that you can figure out what works. And again, feel free to prepare. When you're proactive and intentional in your communication and your relationships, then they improve. And this is just another great space that you can do that. So whether you need to come to the table to a business negotiation or improving a personal relationship, I hope you'll give conversational enrollment a try. And I look forward to seeing how it works for you. Make it happen. Okay, today I'm going to share with you a few of my favorite digital things. We're going to talk about 3 of my favorite apps. Now, it's really tempting to tell you that I spend lots of time on Audible and that everybody should have Audible, but that's like so 2017. So I'm going to share with you some different apps that I hope will be helpful. And the first one is Calm, the Calm app. Now, there are a few other meditation apps that are out there. Some of them I can't even pronounce because they're very fancy. There's also one called Insight Timer that is very simple if you just want to do your own thing, but you just want a nice timer to bring you back. I'm really trying to work on my meditation and my quiet time. So whether I use a guided meditation through the Calm app or just kind of sit and just kind of get centered all by myself using Insight Timer, those are two of my very favorites that I tend to use a lot. Now, along the same lines, my favorite travel app, and I'm not talking about travel tips and advice because there are a few of those, but I will save those for another day. I use the white noise app. I have it downloaded on every single phone. I also take a white noise machine with me when I travel sometimes so that I can eliminate all the sounds that are coming from the hotel or the hallway or whatever else. But if I forget that or if I don't feel like packing it, the white noise app is fantastic. I actually use the one called brown noise, which is why I call it the brown noise app, and got me distracted for just a little bit. But that is a great app to have on your phone so that you can just eliminate other sounds and noises when you travel. Now, there are so many other great apps that I absolutely want to say, hey, do you have this? Do you have that? They're so wonderful. Of course, I spend a lot of time on social media apps. And so I wanted to share with you a social media app that I love. And it's old school, but I still go back to it regularly. And that is the Layout app. If you're looking to put your multiple pictures in one post, I highly recommend Layout. It is still the easiest to use. On a lot of the social media platforms are not doing that. They're giving you the ability to upload pictures, but then they're deciding what the layout looks like. So on Facebook now, they're like, okay, we'll make this one featured, or we'll make this one bigger, and then we'll make these smaller. I don't like that as much. So sometimes I go back into Layout and make that work. I would love to hear what some of your favorite apps are because I'm sure I need to be wasting my time on my phone with other things. Please share with us in the comments your favorite apps. And these are just a few of my favorite digital things. Hopefully, you're starting to identify some places where you could have some repairing conversations that will improve your relationships. I am always cheering you on personally and professionally, so I hope you'll identify one professional relationship you could improve and one personal relationship you could improve by having a conversation that needs to be had. And remember, don't be afraid of some of the critical conversations that you know will improve your energy and the ways that you're showing up in those relationships as well. Also, I would love it if you would just take a few minutes to leave a review, share with other people what you like about this show, and that as they're doing searches and they find your information, they will feel that sense of connection from someone else besides me that says, hey, there's value in these shows. Of course, I would love for you to share what is it from this episode that you liked best. And then as people are looking through, they can find specific pieces of content. Thank you so much for all that you do as you are making it happen in your life. And I am cheering you on. Have a great week.